from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
Do you go on the same holiday every year? To the same country, in the same hotel, with the same sea view, visit the same ancient monuments, lay by the same dolphin-shaped pool, meet the same Barrys and Sandras, and wear the same Hawaiian shirt that you'd never wear at home? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa, with its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Peoples of London, don't be like Sergei, slaving Monday to Friday, then so frazzled by weekend, you no cook Sunday lunch. You need me, Alexander, to save the day.
Oh, so Sunday lunch means meerkat meals?
Exactly. Get 2-for-1 food with meerkat meals at your local favorites, like the Crooked Well, when you buy through Compare the Market. Qualifying purchase, app only, 2-for-1 selected food, participating restaurants, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday, T's and C's and exclusions apply.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only £19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. Was £22.49. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Winter joggers of London, it's chilly. Your legs are caked in mud and your nose is running faster than you. Then, get that heating on. You deserve it. Thanks to Hive Active Heating, you can control your heating wherever you are with a tap of the app, which could save you up to £120 a year by never having to heat an empty home. Buy today and get a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Dribbles with the right hand. Now he attacks. Dribbles with the left hand. Drives, goes up off the glass, makes it in!
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium.
Up with the right hand, because this thing is over!
Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago. Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Equities lower across the board after the release of steady, if uninspiring, numbers on retail sales. Also, investors continue to assess contrasting data from China over how the coronavirus is spreading. Treasuries are advancing. We've got the 10-year up 11/30 seconds now. The yield 1.57%. S&P 500 index down 2 points, down 0.1%. The Dow down 91, down 0.3, and Nasdaq down 3 points, a little change there. Gold is up $8 the ounce, up 0.5%, $15.83 for an ounce of gold. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.9 now, $51.89 a barrel. Again, recapping stocks lower, S&P down 2 points, down 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of power continues. And once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. I am David Weston. In recent years, we've gotten used to presidential candidates writing books to introduce themselves to the public. But it turns out that some form of that tradition goes all the way way back to the founding of our country and Thomas Jefferson. Literary historian Craig Fairman has taken the books our presidents have written and put them together with the history that they've made. And the result is his new book, Author-in-Chief, The Untold Story of Our Presidents and the Books They Wrote. And we welcome him now to Bloomberg. So welcome, Craig. It's great to have you here. Let me start with the most obvious question, but I'm dying to ask it, which is, what gave you this idea?
Well, it actually started back in 2008, if you can believe it or not. That was obviously a very exciting election year for a lot of reasons. One of them was that this unknown candidate named Barack Obama wrote a really good book that a lot of people cared about. And when I read that book and when I saw voters responding to that book, I just got curious and thought, well, has this happened before? Are there other examples of books defining an image or changing a campaign? And so by the next year, I sort of just made a list. And I said, well, how many books are there? And I saw the list was huge. It, as you said, went back to the very founding of our country. And I realized there was a really fascinating and rich story to tell.
Well, take us all the way back to Thomas Jefferson in the notes. Tell us about that book. It's an interesting book because it looks like he worked really, really hard on it, although he didn't particularly want anybody to know that.
Yeah, well, he worked hard on it, and a lot of biographers have said, that he didn't want that book to get out. But when I went back and studied the letters, I think it's actually pretty clear that Jefferson did want to publish that book. This was before he thought about running for president, but he was obsessed with getting everything in this book exactly the way he wanted. He worried about the font size. He worried about the paper quality because he was a book lover and he cared about it. Where it causes problems is when he changed over to being a presidential candidate, because while he wouldn't go out on the campaign trail, his book was a bestseller, and so both his enemies and his supporters would quote the exact same book. One side said, this proves he shouldn't be president. The other side said, this proves he's a great guy.
Now, Thomas Jefferson, of course, knew a little something about writing. I mean, we've inherited some beautiful prose from Thomas Jefferson. Not everybody in your book actually maybe wrote the book. I mean, I really was taken by the Profiles in Courage discussion. I'd always heard suggestions maybe John F. Kennedy didn't write the whole thing, but boy, it sounds to me like Ted Sorensen basically wrote it.
Yeah, if you put a percentage on it, the amount of work that Kennedy did was very, very small, 5%, 10%. Even the idea for the book came from Ted Sorensen. But what really surprised me about that book was how hard Kennedy worked to promote it. And I try to do this in my book. I try to tell the behind-the-scenes stories with these books because sometimes the way the presidents act can tell a lot about them as people. And with Kennedy, he was a senator. He had so much to worry about, but what it seemed he worried about the most was his book. He would write his editor letters and say, hey, I was in the airport and didn't see my book for sale. This was something that really mattered to him, and so much so that he ended up working behind the scenes to get himself the Pulitzer Prize for, like we said, the book he didn't write.
And he was successful. He got the Pulitzer Prize, which meant a lot to him.
It was something that, he just had this real desire for literary fame. He wanted to impress other writers, even if he didn't really want to do the work of being a writer himself.
At the same time, I actually just read the Caro books about LBJ. One of the things in that book said that actually John Fitzgerald Kennedy could write at least his speeches. And obviously Ted Sorensen did a lot, but back when he was in the Senate, before Sorensen was involved, he would sit down and his secretary said, he could just dictate very fluid prose. So it's not like John Kennedy couldn't write.
Absolutely. He and he was probably more involved with his speeches than he was with his books, which is sort of the opposite of what we think. But for whatever reason, when it came time to do that hard research, Kennedy just didn't want to do it. He wanted to be an author. He wanted to have those books attached to him. When he would appear on Meet the Press, they would say, here's Senator and author John F. Kennedy. But when it came time to actually do the work, he needed other people to do it.
So let's talk about one of my personal favorites, which is Ulysses S. Grant. Frankly, I didn't even know he'd written an autobiography until I read a review in the New York Times of President Clinton's autobiography. And it said, of course, it can't compare with the best ever written by Ulysses S. Grant. And I said, oh, no, that can't be right. And then I bought it and read it. It's 2 volumes, and it's quite an autobiography.
It's a beautiful book. It mostly focuses on his work in the Civil War and sort of explains his decisions in battlefields and his feelings for his soldiers. And there are just so many moving passages in that book. It's outstanding. And what's really interesting to me, I think, is that his reading shaped that. He was a big fan of novels. Way back in his days at West Point when he was a cadet, he actually got demerits for spending too much time at the library. But all that lifetime of reading novels and fiction paid off, because when he sat down to write a book of his own, he had a real sense for, the written word and how to tell a good story.
And even though over the years some people have raised questions, did he really write it? He had a researcher that he actually dismissed, I think, because he wanted to make sure it was his writing. And some people suggest maybe Mark Twain had to have written this. There's no doubt, is there, that he actually personally wrote that book?
No, this is a very durable myth. I actually found an obscure letter where even Harry Truman said, I think Mark Twain actually wrote that, but it's just not true. I looked at Grant's handwritten pages. You can see him crossing out words and writing different words in there. It's all in his hand. It's all his book, and it's a masterful book.
Let's come back to the one that got you started, which was Dreams of My Father, that first book by Barack Obama. What do you make of Barack Obama, the writer?
Well, I think it's really important to know that Barack Obama, the writer, came before Barack Obama, the political candidate. We think of him at that famous convention speech in 2004 or running for president in 2008 as somebody who was really polished and had this life story that lined up with his big themes of unity and hope. But he had to figure out how to tell that story. And the way he did that was in the early 1990s as an unknown writer working on his book. It wasn't easy. He actually lost his first book deal, had to get his second book deal, went through many rounds of revisions. But in that process, he sort of figured out, this is not only my life story, this is what my life story means. And I think that was his biggest asset when he ran for president.
So you go through any number of presidents and their books. Overall, could you say that we can learn something about a president as a thinker from a president as a writer?
I think that's absolutely true. Because a lot of times when presidents present something in a book, they're presenting their own life story, and they sort of, as with the Obama example, take the time to sort of say, this is who I am, and this is what I believe in. So presidents who have had great success with books and really used books to launch themselves, they shape their life story around a certain idea, and they use that idea to connect to the issues they care about too. So if a president is a good writer, they can use that not only to, make their life story meaningful, they can use it to make a case for their ideas.
We've talked about books that succeeded. Which one failed?
Probably more than succeeded. And that's in my book, I try to be selective. I try to tell the fun stories and talk about the best books like Grant's or Obama's. But there have definitely been some busts. Herbert Hoover published a multi-volume memoir, and it was basically self-published. He gave the publisher money for advertisements. And when I was looking at his papers at a library in New York, he actually wrote to the publisher and said, don't bother with edits because I'm not taking any of them.
That's always the makings of a good book when you don't want edits.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. This is as good as it could be. Yeah.
Okay, Craig, thank you so very much, and congratulations on the book. That's Craig Fairman. He is the author of Author-in-Chief. And now we are joined by a renowned author, Jason Kelly.
I wish I could have pulled that off with my books. Just been like, nope, exactly. Just publish it as is. Right. Yeah. No need for anything.
Yeah, sure. The editors really like that.
Well, happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Coming up, we actually are going to talk about a little bit of Valentine's Day. We're going to talk about some very fancy bags that maybe you want to buy for your Valentine. Might have a glass of wine. But before we get to all of that, we're going to talk about the markets. We're going to talk about Vanguard getting into the world of private equity. Also have the CEO of Taylor Morrison to talk about housing.
That's because there's so much room in the world of private equity. Hardly anybody's doing it as far as I can tell. Okay. That's coming up on Bloomberg Business Week. That does it for this week. For Balance of Power, I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Switch to Sky Broadband Superfast. It's so reliable, we'll guarantee your speed or money back. It's £27 a month for 18 months with a $19.95 setup fee. So stay connected with reliable Sky Broadband Superfast. Switch or recontract today. Search sky.com. Prices may change during this period. Include Sky Pay As You Talk, Sky Fibre areas. Speeds vary by location. If speed drops below minimum download speed for 3 consecutive days, we'll refund 1 month subscription. Claim twice in minimum term after first 14 days. See sky.com/guarantee.
It's already chilly in London, and you know that dodgy boiler is on its last legs. So if the thought of no heating makes you break out in a cold sweat, talk to British Gas. You can spread the cost of a new boiler interest-free over 2 years and get £200 off when you get a quote by the 29th of February, or £400 off for existing home care customers. British Gas, here to solve. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
The Mona Lisa is only 30 inches tall. The world's hottest chili? 1 inch. And Napoleon? Taller than a Great Dane, but only by 71 centimetres. Who says small can't make an impact? The Peugeot 108 Allure is now available for just $159 per month, with $159 initial rental. Our small but mighty car that doesn't have to cost you a small fortune. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease, 48 months at 159, 18 plus, guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio here in New York City and the Bloomberg 960 studio in San Francisco, right there in the middle of the newsroom. Taylor Riggs is there. I'm here. I'm Jason Kelly. Happy Friday, Tay. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. See that you're wearing your red and white checker to match my red shirt. It's so funny that you mentioned we're in the middle of the newsroom. We're having massive construction around here. So they've put me right here in the middle. Everyone can hear us. They're so excited. We're going to get all of the live action right here, as you can see behind me.
Not a lot of action in the markets today, which is a welcome change for the past couple Fridays where it felt like the market was selling off into worries about the coronavirus. So we're going to talk a little Tesla. We're going to talk a little Goldman. More of that ahead. First, let's talk to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on that trade.
And I thank you very much, Jason Kelly. Valentine's Day red on the screen here. But guess what? We're on track for a winning week for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Right now, yes, I know we got a couple of hours to go, but right now for the week, S&P looking at a gain of 1.3%. Here's where the Friday numbers stand. S&P down 3 points. A little change there. That is a drop of just about 0.1%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 102 points, now lower by 0.4%. NASDAQ down 7, a drop there of less than 0.1%. So bottom line, equities drifting lower after the release of steady, if uninspiring numbers for retail sales. Also, investors continue to assess contrasting data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. 10-year up 12.30 seconds with a yield there of 1.57%. Gold up 0.5 now, 15.83 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up by 1.1% now at 51.98 a barrel. So again, recapping here, equities lower, not by a lot, but the S&P down 3, a drop there of less than 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Jason Kelly, New York. Taylor Riggs in San Francisco. So, as I mentioned, Taylor, Tesla, got to be top of mind for you.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So we talked earlier this week not only about the positive earnings they had, the massive run-up in the stock, and then issuing $2 billion in stock offering given the near record high price target that we've gotten, and now getting to just some more details about this $14 billion cycle that keeps going. Very curious to get some more information, which we will today, on sort of how they're using it to shore up their balance sheet and some of the capital spend that they have in mind.
Yeah, I love talking to Dana Hull about that name. She follows it so close. We're going to talk to her. We're going to talk a little Goldman, as we mentioned. Also going to catch up with the CEO of Taylor Morrison. She's going to join us, talk about some deal making they've been doing, earnings, and also just the state of the home buyer and the home building industry. Also going to talk about retail, little Macy's, little American Dream, so Manhattan and New Jersey, just to make you a little bit homesick there, Taylor. And then Valentine's Day, you know, I haven't gotten you anything yet, but we're going to talk about some fancy bags, and also you'll be doing something else by that point. Going to have a glass of wine to celebrate. Sorry.
Well, look at you.
I know. I'm living my best life.
You deserve it. You've been working hard.
Thank you, as have you. All right. Speaking of a couple people who are working hard, they're going to help us set the Business Week agenda. They're here with me in New York City. Vildana Heinrich, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg. She's in our Bloomberg Interactive Worker studio, alongside Dave Wilson, stocks editor for Bloomberg, author of The Chart and Stock of the Day. Vildana, I want to start with you. What's the one thing we need to be thinking about today as we head into a long holiday weekend?
One of the things I wanted to point out is you mentioned stocks are down a little bit today, but they've been down every single Friday since news of the virus broke out. So even though we're red today for Valentine's Day, maybe, it has been a trend, because the thinking goes that maybe news breaks out over the weekend in terms of whatever's going on with the virus outbreak in China. And if the news worsens, then traders want to be prepared.
Right. Dave, what is the thing that's top of mind for you?
There's a bit of defense being played in the stock market today. I mean, you wouldn't know it from looking at the S&P 500 without a whole lot of direction. But in terms of what's up, you've got real estate, you've got utilities, and you've got the makers of consumer staples, food, beverage, tobacco. I mean, so the classic areas that people turn to when they're concerned about what's ahead. And, I mean, considering that we've seen record after record for the S&P 500 lately, it's a bit of a cautionary tale, you might say. And I was checking out the S&P 500 real estate index. It's up for its 7th day in a row, and that's the longest streak in more than a year. Now, you can argue this is a time of year when home builders tend to do well, people looking ahead to the spring selling season and anticipating that you're going to get something out of that. But, I mean, that's home building. With real estate, you know, we're talking about, you know, offices and you know, the high dividend kind of stocks. So, you know, it's a bit of a different dynamic there. And to see it doing well at this time of year, I mean, it tells you people are going for yield wherever they can find it. And given that 10-year treasuries are around 1.6% in terms of their yield, you can understand why.
Vildana, I'm desperate to get your thoughts on U.S. versus international equities. I was speaking with David Kelly yesterday. He's global CIO of JP Morgan Asset Management, and he's pitching a room of CFA charter holders on why to go international equities versus U.S., which is a pretty bold call, given U.S. has been the trade of 2019. What is the case right now from what notes you're reading from the street from strategists for international equities in this environment?
So it's important to remember that coming into 2020, the vast majority of strategists were calling for exactly that, for international stocks to start outperforming U.S. stocks once again. And so the notes that have been coming out is strategists really digging in their heels and saying this is still very likely to happen. They're just basically pushing out their outlooks to the latter half of the year and saying maybe it doesn't happen early on in January, February, but we'll start to see international stocks, whether it's emerging markets or the Eurozone, start to outperform.
All right, Taylor, what do you think is the one thing people need to know? You got a little tech angle for us?
I do. So yesterday I was also speaking with the 43rd U.S. Treasurer, Rosie Rios, and she said crypto is actually becoming a legit currency that in her time, of course, from 2009 to 2016, not quite looking at legitimizing it. But you know what? You have a lot of conversations with this Fed, with this Treasury Department about looking at crypto. Vildana, let me quickly, I guess, come to you. Is crypto a real legitimate currency?
That's a very, very good question. I think we're going to be debating this question for a really long time. I think you hear arguments like that whenever the prices of cryptocurrencies are actually rising, and they have been rising this year. Bitcoin itself is up about 40% so far this year, and some of the other smaller or alternative coins, some of them are up more than 100%. So you'll hear a lot of arguments as to why and what is going on in the crypto sphere that could be pushing prices even higher.
All right, Vildana Heinrich, thank you so much. Cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg. Dave Wilson, one final thought from you before you head back to your desk?
Well, you know, it isn't just international stocks that strategists have been getting behind. It's also the value stocks, the ones that have been cheaper relative to earnings and sales and that sort of thing. And that trade hasn't worked out either. Be listening next hour for my chart of the day, and you'll find out what's going on.
I love it when you tease your chart. All right, Dave Wilson, thank you. We will see you at the bottom of the 3 o'clock hour here in New York for your chart of the day. Taylor Riggs, let's do the Bloomberg Business Week Bite of the Day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, not surprisingly, it's 14. Today, as we know, is February 14th, Valentine's Day. Not to be confused with February 13th. That's Galentine's Day. We talked about that yesterday. This holiday dates back to the 5th century, not to Parks and Rec, and was initially marked to honor the martyrdom of St. Valentine. He supposedly married lovers when it was banned for some time under the Roman Empire. Another myth is that he was imprisoned for helping Christians escape in Rome, and fell in love with the jailer's daughter, to whom he sent the first Valentine. Valentine's Day became a regular celebratory event from the 18th century onwards, with exchanges of written notes, cards, and flowers among the beloved. And I did learn something, a little bit of trivia earlier, Taylor, which was, do you know who basically was the first to box chocolates and make that a thing for Valentine's Day?
No, who?
Richard Cadbury, back in the 1860s. It checks out. It makes sense.
I like my Ghirardelli Square just right up the road here.
There you go. You know, you can take the girl out of California. But let's get to Bob Mood here in New York City. He's got your World National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Thank you, Jason. A senior U.S. official says the United States and Taliban have reached a truce agreement that will take effect very soon and could lead to withdrawals of American troops from Afghanistan. The official said today that the agreement for a 7-day reduction in violence, to be followed by the start of all Afghan peace talks within 10 days, follows a very specific route and covers the entire country, including Afghan forces. The development comes as Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Mark Esper met in Munich today with Afghanistan's president. Federal prosecutors have declined to charge former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, according to his law team, closing an investigation into whether he lied to federal officials about his involvement in a news media leak. McCabe, a CNN contributor, told the network he's glad to be able to speak out about the country he loves.
As the president's interest in pursuing his perceived political enemies continued over the last 2 years, we were getting more and more concerned about where this would end up. Because quite frankly, we are seeing things happen every day in this country that many of us never, ever thought we'd see here.
The decision resolves a criminal investigation that spanned more than a year. The criminal case against President Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, has been assigned to an outside prosecutor by Attorney General William Barr, according to a report in the New York Times. It cites people familiar with the matter. The report notes the review is highly unusual and could trigger more accusations of political interference in the Justice Department. Global News 24 hours a day. I'm Bob Moon.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People are talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the ad.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
I'm Captain Obvious, and every day people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like. A hate like is when you like Becky's picture of another waterfall even though you kind of hate it because she's there and you're on the train next to a mouth breather. Don't hate like Becky's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com. Hotels.com. Be there, do that.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
It's time to search out On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
At Wix, we'll create your dream kitchen from design to show-off ready and take care of everything. And now, save a third on showroom kitchen units. Book your free design appointment today. Cure your house embarrassment with Wix. For minimum spend, terms and exclusions, see wix.co.uk.
You could find a £5, a £10, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
I've got my own place now, Money. My parents put up the 10% security. And when I keep up my repayments, they get it back with interest in 5 years from Barclays. And now we can do whatever we want. Right, Dave? We don't have to tiptoe up the stairs. I can paint the living room purple. Don't look at me like that, Money. It's my house. Barclays Family Springboard Mortgage. Make money work for you.
Your home may be repossessed if mortgage payments are missed. Deposit returned with interest after 5 years if no repayments missed. Subject to application, financial circumstances, and borrowing history. T's and C's apply.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Michael Avenatti found guilty. Avenatti convicted moments ago of trying to extort millions of dollars from Nike and defrauding a client in the process, completing a steep fall for a celebrity lawyer who shot to national attention by styling himself as a foil for President Trump. Manhattan jurors today finding Avenatti guilty of 3 criminal counts. The verdict follows a 2-week trial. Stay with Bloomberg for more on this story. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. S&P down 6, a drop of 0.2% after the release of steady, if uninspiring, numbers for retail sales. Also, investors are assessing contrasting data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. The Dow down 131 points, down 0.5%. NASDAQ down 17, a drop there of 0.2%. 10 years up 12.30 seconds with a yield of 1.57%. Gold higher up by 0.5%, $15.84 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude also advancing this Friday, up by 1% at $51.96 a barrel. So it is a down Friday, on track though for a winning week. S&P lower by 6, down 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
When it goes round in circles.
All right, so let's talk a little Tesla. We do it often. We're also very fortunate that we get to do it pretty often with Dana Hull. She follows the company so closely. And the headline on the story today that she wrote with Gabby Coppola really sums it up. Tesla capital raise keeps $14 billion virtuous circle rolling. It certainly does. And Dana, one of the things that struck me, and you just nail it right there at the top of your story, is normally in this sort of situation, you would look at a company saying, oh, we got to go get more money as a little bit of a problem. Oh, we're diluting shareholders. That's a little bit of a problem. And yet, this is Tesla. Tesla does not go the way that people normally expect. Help us understand the context here.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're seeing now is that, it's always about the future, right? Elon Musk is always selling this vision of the future, and now that they seem to have mastered, the past challenges of actually getting the Model 3 out the door, the share price is really high. The idea of them going out and getting money so that they can do things like build out this plant in Berlin or perhaps another plant in Texas seems more doable. So people are more than willing to kind of fund the vision of the future, and the banks get fees, and everyone sort of wins out.
Dan, I'm also wondering if Gene Munster puts this correctly, as you write in your story where you say, Elon had assured investors he didn't plan to raise capital. His backpedaling is a criticism, but frankly, the state of the balance sheet is a bigger criticism. So perhaps this is seen as a good thing because it could shore up the balance sheet.
Yeah, I mean, and some analysts like David Whiston of Morningstar, they just wish that Tesla would go out and raise like $5 billion and be done with it, and just raise a ton of money and be set instead of having to go back to the market sort of year after year. But it is kind of funny how, just on the earnings call 2 weeks ago, Musk was asked very specifically, do you have any plans to do a raise? And he's like, no. And then, 2 weeks later, here we are. This is the second time that he's done that, actually. So, people are a little frustrated that, that he says one thing and then they do the other. But from an investor perspective, having money on hand is always a good thing.
And so, Dana, this is also a good moment to ask you about sort of the state of Musk. We have a fairly good sense of the state of Tesla. What do you sort of draw conclusion-wise from looking at the company right now, looking at the decision-making, and especially this amazing run? Where's sort of Elon's mind as much as anybody can understand it outside of his own head?
Well, it's not like I'm talking on the phone with the guy every day. I mean, right. I have not interacted with him directly recently, but I think that this is a guy whose entire career and much of the kind of mystique and persona around him is built around him proving doubters wrong. And so, the classic example is with SpaceX. They were, for months they tried to land this rocket on a drone ship. No one thought they were ever going to be able to pull it off, and now not only have they done it several times, but it's kind of become old hat. Most, we don't even cover the drone ship landings anymore. And with Tesla, the Model 3, everyone questioned what the demand would be like. When they started building the factory in China, there were a lot of skeptics who said that this mud pit would never turn into a factory. And now, here they are, building cars in China. And so I think he feels probably emboldened. Certainly, he has a very long kind of time horizon. And so people always ding him for being late on his promises, but he ultimately does tend to deliver on them. Maybe not in the time frame that he originally anticipated, but you look around at the competitive landscape, no other rocket company is landing rockets quite in the way that SpaceX is. No other automaker is selling electric vehicles in the volumes that Tesla is. And it's like a new decade. They've had 2 quarters of back-to-back profits. They just went out to the market and raised another $2 billion. I mean, I think he's feeling pretty good about things right now.
Dan, I'm doing my Elon Musk dance right now for our YouTube video. Jason, if you can see me.
This
is the Elon Musk dance.
That's the dance. All right.
Dan, on a more serious note, Elon Musk and Tesla have been criticized for the lack of investment in R&D and CapEx last year. And of course, then they got a big profitability number. But some of the concerns now, if you come out with a $3.5 billion CapEx budget, can you still be profitable on that number? What are you hearing?
Well, I think it'll be really interesting to see what the first quarter is, which they've sort of hinted at is likely going to be soft because of seasonality and the fallout from the coronavirus. But that's one of the things that Musk has gone back and forth on. They've said they'll be They've said that they'll be sustainably profitable, and then they're like, unless we're investing in growth, but they're always investing in growth. So are investors willing to kind of take? I guess the question is, what do investors want? Do they want profitability every quarter, or do they want the company to really kind of come and dominate? And I think some investors are willing to sacrifice short-term profits if it means long-term, sort of market dominance.
All right, Dana Hull, we really appreciate it. Tech reporter, looking after all things Tesla, all things Elon Musk. That is, as we joked yesterday, Taylor, like 8 full-time jobs. All right, she joined us on the phone from San Francisco. San Francisco is also where Taylor Riggs is. And Taylor, coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about an industry very popular there in California. That would be the weed industry, and an emigre, as it were, from Goldman, who says, being a banker is cool, but being in the marijuana business is even cooler, right?
Jason, I was shocked when I came out here and I saw the emergence of big traditional banking sector with the finance sector. Never thought I'd live to see the day of traditional banking sector with the marijuana sector. So I guess I always learn something new out here in San Francisco.
There you go. All right. Well, you got a true bi-coastal edition of Bloomberg Business Week today. I'm Jason Kelly in New York, Taylor Riggs in San Francisco. Much more ahead. Stick with us. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks aren't getting much love this Valentine's Day. Prices are drifting lower, with investors reluctant to stick their necks out ahead of a long weekend. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 92, the S&P 500 down 1, the Nasdaq Composite is down a fraction. We still had a little more left to spend after the holidays. The government says retail sales rose in January for a 4th straight month. But not all retailers benefited. Sales fell at electronics, clothing, and personal care stores. GM is working to keep the parts flowing to its U.S. factories so the coronavirus doesn't slow production. A letter from a United Auto Workers member in Flint, Michigan, said the threat of a part shortage is growing. Amazon is cutting ties to an Illinois company that handled its deliveries in 5 states. It says Bear Down Logistics failed to meet Amazon standards. About 400 drivers are being laid off. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
Give ordinary some oomph. Give it some gusto. Give it all hands on deck with over 40 recipes every week for you and the kids to choose from. Give it all the ingredients you need delivered to your door. Give it a delicious home-cooked meal from just £2.98 per person. Go on. Give it some gusto. Visit gusto.co.uk today and get 50% off your first box. Subscription auto-renews, cancel anytime.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium. Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago.
Deep three, and in! Oh, man! 5 to shoot, LeBron, long 3, good!
Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want. Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations, live commercial-free news, and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, coming up, we've been having a lot of fun with this story off the air and a little bit on the air, Taylor. We're going to talk about a Goldman partner going to the weed business from, hey, let's do a deal to, hey, let's do a deal. All right? We're going to get to that in just a second. Charlie Pellet, he's laughing at my joke. He's here in New York City with an update on the trade.
All right, here's what's going on. We have got the S&P 500 index. A little change lower right now, down by a point, dropping just about 0.1%, 33.72 on your S&P 500 index. We have got the Dow down 89, lower by 0.3%. NASDAQ down 3 points, drop there of less than 0.1%. Bottom line, equities drifting lower after the release of steady, if perhaps uninspiring numbers for retail sales. Also, investors are assessing contrasting data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland President Loretta Mester says the impact of the coronavirus and the risk it poses to the global economy have not changed her forecast for continued growth of about 2% in the U.S. this year. And she spoke today in an interview with Bloomberg Radio and Television.
We now have some new risks, including the coronavirus, so you have to take that into account when you're thinking about growth. But right now I'm thinking of that as a risk. I expect that certainly in China and perhaps in Asia, the first quarter numbers are going to be weaker. There could be spillover to the U.S. economy as well.
The head of the International Monetary Fund says global central banks and governments may need to unite to fight the economic fallout from the coronavirus. This, according to IMF Managing Director Kristalina Georgieva. NVIDIA shares surging 7% on a down day for the rest of the market. Last night, the chipmaker reported fourth quarter results that beat expectations. Also delivered a strong outlook. Again, NVIDIA up now by 7%. And Expedia shares, they're rallying by 12%. It delivered a 2020 profit forecast for, quote, double-digit growth, topping analyst estimates. Again, Expedia up now by 12.2%. 10-year up 11.30 seconds, yield 1.57%, gold up 0.5, crude West Texas Intermediate up 1.1%, 51.99 a barrel. Recapping, the S&P down a point now, little change, 33.73. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
There were a lot of opportunities for songs leading into this segment. It also is a story and a discussion that helps solve a little bit of a mystery that's been going on over at Goldman, which is where are all these guys going? A lot of big tech guys leaving, and at least one has landed, and he's landed in the marijuana business. Sri Natarajan here with me in New York City, finance reporter, looking after all things Goldman for us and much more across Wall Street. So tell us about Mike Blum.
Well, a high-frequency trading expert at Goldman is ditching his prestigious partnership role to go and join a company that's going to open a bunch of weed dispensaries across the country.
You missed an obvious opportunity to make a high-frequency joke, but I'm going to let that slide. Were you surprised by this move?
Oh, my God, Taylor, no offense, but I really miss Carol, because if she was here, the amount of serious eye rolls we would be getting.
So many eye rolls. So many eye rolls. So many eye rolls.
I'm eye rolling. Jason just can't see me because I'm not with him in person.
Luckily, all of our YouTube viewers can see it. But,
I just have to be the polite guest. I couldn't.
I know. You're so nice.
No, but to your question, Jason, it's instructive in many ways, right? Of course, when people leave firms, why they choose to do it, when they do it, there are a variety of different factors: family, lack of interest in the role, new opportunities. But still, when you decide to leave your perch as a partner at Goldman Sachs, their highest title, one of Wall Street's foremost investment banks, and decide to take a different opportunity, in this case a startup in the marijuana space, it gives you a sense of where he thinks the real opportunity lies, and perhaps also indicative of the fact that he wasn't entirely, fully, 100% committed to what he was doing at Goldman, because he did have a weighty task. He did win approval and a lot of funds to make a bunch of hires, to make a big push to overhaul their electronic trading systems, had to convince senior management, a number of other people, to be able to get those projects rolling. And for him to be leaving a few months after that, it was a bit of a surprise when we heard about it. And it seems he's decided to go out there and pair up with some of his ex-colleagues from a previous firm to join this startup venture.
Sri, I'm curious to get your thoughts about what's going on at Goldman more generally. You originally never really heard a lot of stories about people leaving, because it's so hard to get into that once you're there at Goldman, you are really excited to be there and to work your way up. We've seen, though, a lot of departures recently, especially from the top ranks. Is there a lack of vote of confidence in Goldman, or is there just a bigger vote of confidence somewhere else?
That's a tough question, Taylor, because, and we had this discussion yesterday when we were thinking about all the troubles at Goldman and all the people leaving. when we go back a year ago, the January, February of 2019, again, we saw a lot of departures. We were able to explain away a lot of that, saying, hey, whenever there's a new management, in this case, David Solomon took over the role of CEO and chairman from Lloyd Blankfein, you expect a change of the guard. You expect a lot of people aligned with Lloyd or the old guard to be leaving. And the new guy comes in and installs a lot of his people at various roles. And in an ambitious, competitive place like Goldman, you will see a lot of churn. The difficult part here, the troubling part here is a year later, 15 months in his tenure, we're still talking about this time of the year and the kind of high-profile departures we're seeing, which has got a lot of tongues wagging across Wall Street for sure, and the competitors are paying attention. You can be guaranteed about that.
And somebody else leaving.
And the other names that we included in the story couldn't play it higher because I was just so much interested in giving all the details on the marijuana startup. Otherwise, Jason would have killed us. But yes, Jeff Winner joined Goldman 2 years ago after having senior engineering roles in places like Stripe and Uber. Silicon Valley name. He was supposed to build out this big San Francisco office for Goldman, and he's gone in under 2 years. It's funny when we sort of look back at the old clips and the interviews we did with him at the time of his joining. He talked about how there is still a lot of stuffiness in this place, but the bank is working to get rid of it.
Right.
He talked about free-flowing kombucha. Unfortunately, before he could get his free fill of kombucha, he's decided he's had enough.
All right. Well, it's a good story. Thank you for being a good sport as I make all my terrible marijuana puns here. It's a Friday afternoon. It's been a long week, and, it's just too good. It's just too easy. It's sitting right there. Sri Natarajan, always doing such a great job with the comings and goings at Goldman Sachs, and Goldman partner ditching a pursuit of quants for a marijuana startup is a really nice story and one of the most read on the Bloomberg. And in all seriousness, does start to answer the question, where are all these Goldman folks going? Coming up, we're going to check in with Devin Leonard on his story in the magazine. He does a lot of projects, investigations type work. This is a different sort of investigation because it involves very, very, very difficult puzzles, literally puzzles. All right, Taylor Riggs and Jason Kelly here with you. First, Bob Moon, World National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, Michael Avenatti, the celebrity lawyer who shot to national attention by styling himself as a foil for President Trump, was convicted today of trying to extort millions of dollars from Nike and defrauding a client in the process. The verdict by jurors in Manhattan could lead to a long prison sentence for the lawyer, who became a national figure when he represented Stormy Daniels in her lawsuit against Trump. Avenatti claimed this case was political payback for his clash with Trump. Avenatti's legal problems may grow, though. He'll go on trial again in April in New York on charges that he stole a book advance intended for Daniels, who fired him. A jury will now decide the fate of disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein in his New York City rape trial after prosecutors made their closing arguments today. Defense attorney Donna Rotuno argued her client had consensual sexual relationships with the accusers, but says her client is braced for a jury verdict that may not see it that way.
I don't know if anybody's ever really ready for that. I think it's a tough position for anyone to be in anytime you're facing these types of allegations, and now the trial's over and you have to put your faith in someone else's hands.
Prosecutors completed their closing argument, saying Weinstein considered himself such a big shot in Hollywood that he thought he could get away with treating aspiring actresses as complete disposables. A senior U.S. official said today the United States and the Taliban have agreed to a truce agreement that will take effect very soon and could lead to withdrawals of American troops from Afghanistan. The official said the agreement calls for a 7-day reduction in violence. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons, at TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Ah, good book. Refreshing drink. 6 degrees outside. 35 in here. This really is the life.
Could the gentleman in aisle 2 please remove himself from the hot tub?
Oh, so much for try before you buy.
Well, at Ford, you can. Test drive and purchase any new Ford car or commercial vehicle this February, and we'll give you an additional £500 off the recommended retail price. Search Ford Test Drive Promotion. Retail and small business customers only. Contract and registered by 29th of February 2020 at participating Ford dealers. Excludes Ford scrappage.
It might still be cold and dark outside, but at least a new phone can brighten things up. You can get an epic iPhone 8 with a 12-megapixel camera at an epic price. At Tesco Mobile, you can get the iPhone 8 for only $19.99 a month. That's a saving of £90. So go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 23rd of February, saving £2.50 per month over 36 months. What's £22.49? 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements required. Subject to status phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Dribbles with the right hand. Now he attacks. Dribbles with the left hand. Drives, goes up off the glass, banks it in!
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium.
Stop with the right hand! Because this thing is over!
Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago. Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. NASDAQ now higher up by 2 points, but both the Dow and the S&P 500 index, they are trading lower. Equities fluctuating after the release of steady, if uninspiring, numbers for retail sales. Also, investors are assessing contrasting data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. S&P 500 index on track for a winning week, though it is swinging between small gains and small losses. Lower than average volume. A lot of people taking off early for a 3-day weekend. S&P down now by a point. Little change. The Dow slumping 90. It is down by 0.3%. We've got the 10-year up 11/32 seconds. Yield 1.57%. Again, NASDAQ up by half a point. Little change. Gold up 0.5%. $15.83 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude oil up 1%, $51.97 a barrel. Again, recapping, S&P lower by a point. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
And what is it that has to be done as a puzzle in a song? Now, how do you know if you know how to do?
All right, so when it comes to Valentine's Day gifts, maybe this isn't the one you want unless you want your Valentine to be both ignoring you and maybe really, really mad at you. It's such a great story. We're talking about stave puzzles, where the torture is the point. Devin Leonard wrote this story. Quite an assignment he got for Bloomberg Business Week. As I joked earlier, Devin, usually you're doing these deep dive investigations. You're telling us about like Mick Mulvaney and Steve Mnuchin and folks like that. But here we are talking to you about puzzles. So why? What's going on here?
I don't know. This is a really weird one. I mean, this is a company basically that until recently was run by a guy who described himself as its chief tormentor. Its customers, they all basically say they're addicts, and to these weird games, some of which the company says are created by a sadist. So that's just not the type of story I do all the time. And I had no idea what I was getting into when Joel Weber, the magazine editor, asked me to do it.
Yeah, Devin, how did you find this story?
I'd never heard of this company. I'm not a puzzle guy.
Yeah.
But
Joel kind of is. I mean, I think that part of it is he knew about this from maybe being tortured.
Or a cousin or something. But no, I just had no idea. And it really wasn't. I went up there and I stayed at that place. It's really swanky, resort, Twin Farms, and they had them in all the rooms. I couldn't do mine. My daughter later did it in 10 minutes, But that's when I started to see, like, hey, wait a minute, the rooms, the suites go for $1,000, $2,000 a night, and there's something, there's something going on here. And then I went over to the company, and basically they took me all around and showed me the crazy puzzles, and then they showed me a whole wall, and there's Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates and Queen Elizabeth and the Bush family, and so basically all these people. You have to have money because the puzzles cost as much as 10 grand. So.
Right. I have to say, like, in reading your story, it feels like, and you've just illustrated it pretty well. It's almost like you go down this rabbit hole, right? into this place where people are sort of obsessive about it. Clearly, they appeal to a certain type of person. Tell us about the puzzles themselves.
Well, they're sort of, I guess they're very, they're very. I guess they're beautiful. I mean, I'm not really a puzzle person, but they're designed in ways to just be very difficult. They come in boxes. They're blue boxes, so you don't have a picture of the puzzle in the box when you put it together. They throw in pieces that purposely don't fit. Then they have all these other tricks that they use to sort of drive people crazy. But then you wind up talking to the people who spend all this money on these things. So that's what they want. Yeah. They want to kind of be tortured, and they want things to be really hard, and they want it to be a challenge. And sometimes it drives them crazy. And one guy said he curses at his puzzles, but he buys 10 a year. Or sorry, not 10 a year, 10 at a time. Oh.
Wow. Devin, I'm going on the website right now, and there's a puzzle for Valentine's Day that Jason's going to get me. It's $907. It has this sweetheart little street. It's called Sweet Streets, just in time for Valentine's Day. But in your story, you talk about a lot of other cool ones, like these boxes and locks and very non-traditional, right? Talk to us about some of these crazy puzzles that you mentioned in your story.
Well, maybe the best example is, this custom-made one that they made for this guy in Dallas. His name's Hal Brierly. He's a really interesting guy in and of himself. I mean, he's sort of one of the fathers of customer loyalty programs. He either designed them or ran them for the major airlines, for Hertz, for Hilton. But basically, he's a guy. He's a workaholic, and he needs these puzzles sort of to get his mind off of work. He's still like 74 and he's still doing this. So basically, his wife and his sister-in-law have been ordering him these custom-made puzzles, and the one he's working on, he can't finish. It's driving him nuts. It's more than 1,000 pieces, and it's designed. It's inspired by these African safari trips they've all taken. 2/3 of the pieces are all blue, and basically what he doesn't understand. I mean, maybe he's figured out now. I don't think he has. But there's a whole other level to the puzzle that fits on top of the continent of Africa. It's all water, but the pieces are almost all the same size. There's no guide, and this is a really smart guy who does tons and tons of puzzles, but he can't figure it out. And he basically said, "I'm a guy who bills by the hour. I've sort of calculated how much time it's going to take. I don't know if it's worth it, but right. I love these things." So
one of the things that occurs to me, Devin, and I wonder if this occurred to you as you were working on it. This feels like kind of an analog antidote to a very digital world, right? It's very tactile, and even some of the other things you talk about are experiential. Right. And more it does feel like, and you've alluded to this already, this is an escape from being in front of these screens or holding our phones and things like that. People draw a lot of satisfaction out of this.
Yeah, and it is sort of amazing that in this day and age, some little company could, prosper by making something that's sort of, I guess now you can buy them online, but everything used to be done through the mail, and I think they still do send thank you notes, handwritten thank you notes, and I mean, and the whole thing is so sort of retro, but I think that's sort of the point. I mean, the one thing for them is the customers are all pretty old. Just about everybody I talked to was in their 70s, so right. I mean, I did see them, among other things. Well, it's Valentine's Day. They designed these puzzles for people that some person puts it together with their significant other, and then as they're finishing it, they put these pieces in. I guess the person who bought the puzzle gives them, oh, by the way, I got these pieces, and then it says, "Will you marry me?" And I guess the one example, the one or two examples they showed me, the answer was no. But,
oh no! Oh,
so buyer beware. Right. But it's like nothing I've ever seen before.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Well,
I need to meet that girl who said no. I think I'm a fan of hers. But on a more serious note, I think like you were alluding to, Jason, in this digital world, I remember during Superstorm Sandy when all of our lights went out, we're all doing puzzles by candlelight, right? Because our mobile devices stopped working. And around Christmas time when we're all on our phones, it's kind of a nice break to maybe just sit down and do a puzzle. And so I'm really wondering if this is the beginning of a bigger trend where we put some of these mobile devices down and use this as a really way to connect with people again.
If you can afford it.
If you can afford it, that's absolutely true. Well, this is a really terrific story. It is being consumed pretty madly on the Bloomberg terminal and online. This one's going to have a long tail, I can guarantee you that. Devin Leonard wrote it. He is a projects and investigations reporter, a different sort of project in this case, looking into some very tough to solve puzzles. I'm Jason Kelly here in New York City. Taylor Riggs is out in San Francisco shopping for puzzles and Valentine's Day presents and all sorts of things. Coming up, we're going to get a look at the world of economics. Our team is going to be here with us for that. And a little bit later on, we're going to talk also about the real estate market, the residential real estate market, some deal making going on there, a little retail, and then Taylor's going to be doing something else, but I'm going to have a glass of wine. This is Bloomberg.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
I'm Captain Obvious, and every day people book trips on Hotels.com that you will later hate like. A hate like is when you like Becky's picture of another waterfall even though you kind of hate it because she's there and you're on the train next to a mouth breather. Don't hate like Becky's trip. Book your own with Hotels.com. Hotels.com. Be there, do that.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is our story. The Birds of Prey. Yeah. Roman is building an army. He's after all of us. We gotta clean the city from the inside out.
Critics are saying Margot Robbie is brilliant as Harley Quinn.
Hi, boys.
A fantastic assault on the senses. An irresistible riot of popcorn fun. Brilliantly acted and very funny. 4 stars. Birds of Prey. In cinemas now. Certificate 15.
The UK has now left the EU, and we're in a transition period until the end of the year. Throughout this period, the government will be forging new partnerships with the EU and the rest of the world. This could lead to new arrangements for trade, travel, and business. To find out about the changes and how they might affect you, go to gov.uk/transition.
The financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this Friday. It is a down day with the Dow and the S&P 500 index both moving lower. NASDAQ on the plus side. We are on track for a winning week for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Here's where we stand. S&P 500 index lower, little change. Light volume down 1 point right now at 33.72. NASDAQ eking out a 1 point gain, also little changed. The Dow is down 0.3%, lower now by 85 points. Stocks fluctuating after the release of uninspiring numbers for retail sales. Also, investors continue to assess contrasting data from China over how the coronavirus is spreading. We've got the 10-year up, 9/30 seconds, yield now 1.58%. American factory output dropped in January, depressed by the production of Boeing's troubled 737 MAX jetliner. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
The 737 MAX stoppage will probably hurt throughout the first half of the year. Chicago-based Boeing received 0 aircraft orders. We're talking all models in January. But factory output, excluding aircraft, was actually up last month. That's a sign, perhaps, of stabilization in other sectors. Total factory output last fell in September and October. Vinny Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland President Loretta Mester told Bloomberg Radio and Television the impact of the coronavirus and the risk it poses to the global economy haven't changed her forecast for continued growth of about 2% in the U.S. this year. In the meantime, the head of the International Monetary Fund says global central banks and governments may need to unite to fight the economic fallout from the coronavirus. After earnings, we've got NVIDIA shares pushing higher. The chipmaker did report fourth quarter results that beat expectations, also gave a strong outlook. NVIDIA up by 7.2%. Expedia, after earnings, rallying today by 11.9%. And Kraft Heinz, the iconic food giant created and emerged 5 years ago, downgraded to junk by Fitch Ratings. Kraft Heinz shares down 4%. Recapping, S&P down a point. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little Business Week economics now. It's that time of the day, that time of the week when we look at what's been going on. Taylor Riggs here with me in San Francisco. Here with me in New York City is Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg, and Andrew Husby, U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics. Andrew, I want to start with you. Retail sales, what do we think?
At the moment, it really continues a pattern of the consumer being the main story behind U.S. growth. We think the results were strong enough to keep a first quarter growth profile of about 2%, maybe a bit less intact. We saw mixed results, kind of supported by building materials, probably boosted by warmer weather in the month. Elsewhere, mixed, but some good news in some discretionary categories. So ultimately, and some of that may be a reflection of kind of a side effect of the coronavirus outbreak on global oil markets. Gas prices are down, discretionary income is up a bit, so money that isn't being spent at the pump is being spent on other things like eating out and such. So the profile for us hasn't really changed very much. So we're still looking for, again, pretty concentrated growth centered on the consumer in Q1.
You know, speaking of pumps and plumbing, I want to bring in Alex Harris here because she's our bond reporter. Alex, I was speaking last night to David Kelly. He's a global CIO at JP Morgan Asset Management.
We did not know where you were going there, Taylor.
I know.
The look on Alex Harris's face was
She's
like...
probably like, what?
Who is this person in San Francisco saying these things about me?
Well, I want to talk about the plumbing of the financial system.
Good.
This is where I'm going, right? So I spoke with David Kelly last night, and someone had a question for him about why is the repo market in trouble, or why was it in trouble? One of his responses was there is so much regulation that some of these banks are afraid to come in and step in and provide some liquidity. There's so much regulation, they were afraid of breaking a rule or getting fined. Is there any sense or reason to that perhaps banks are now so afraid to step in because they don't know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do until it's too late?
I think he sort of simplified it a little too much. Obviously a market person's take or free marketer's take is, yes, there's too much regulation. I think from what we heard from Jerome Powell this week when he testified before Congress on Tuesday and Wednesday, and the sense I get from speaking with other people is that, yes, there is regulation, but I think some of it is just sort of those same pile of cash is being regulated, and so what that's done is sort of prevented money moving around the system sort of on an intraday basis, and that's what Jerome Powell and Randy Quarles have gotten at, is that, the cash was there, but we could not free it up because, there's certain stress testing and liquidity rules that prevent it from being utilized, and the banks are just worried about if they utilize it or they put it into the system, then they're going to be caught short and then they get penalized. And so what ends up happening is that the banks get into a situation where they don't want to be at the bare minimum. One of the things the regulators have said is, well, they only need to be at a certain threshold, but they're way above it. Well, no one wants to get to that threshold because they don't want to face the penalties when they're there. So they're going to hold more than is necessarily needed. And so that's what I think it is. And what Randy Quarles and I think Jerome Powell have been talking about is tweaking these rules, tweaking these intraday liquidity rules, so you do get the plumbing and the pipes more lubricated during the day and to get that moving. But I don't necessarily think that means like a wholesale rollback of regulation.
Andrew, I want to pull you back in here because I want to get some reaction from these comments that I heard as well from both the U.S. Treasurer, the 43rd U.S. Treasurer, Rosie Rios. I was interviewing her alongside David Kelly of J.P. Morgan last night, and we were asking them, where does the next recession come from? What does it look like? Because the coronavirus can't take us down. What can? And he said it's going to be social inequality, not the consumer, not a coronavirus. You think about the people who have money, they save. They only spend 70% of their income. People who don't have money, they're the ones actually spending 90 to 101% of their income. But that gap is getting so large that eventually that social inequality is what is going to drive that next recession. What are your thoughts on that?
Sure, there are a lot of issues there. Certainly some of the things you mentioned, you do see it in...
And you have 1 minute.
Exactly right.
Just kidding.
In the economic data, you see, price inflation is low, but the cost of things, housing, very, very high. You see, again, the distributional concerns that you mentioned, definitely a factor behind different political elements within the electorate this year. And you could see, I think where this ties into the ability to respond or fight recession is the typical tools we normally have are not quite there in the way that they normally are. Rates are low, and also on the fiscal side, there isn't as much space there. So to the extent that some of this inequality either creates, either a big push in spending that maybe creates some concerns about debt levels and interest rates, way down the road. I don't think any of this that we're talking about is a this year or next year event, but I think it is, as people look out 5 years or 3 to 5 years, that this is certainly a good area to continue to monitor, and I think we're going to see a lot of emphasis on that this year.
Taylor, one of the things that I know you've been talking with your guests about, and you did yesterday, was this whole notion of deficits, and no one cares, apparently, anymore. What did you make of that line of questioning?
Yeah, I think we were shocked. Both David Kelly and Rosie Rios. Remember, she was the treasurer from 2009 to 2016. Yeah. So she saw a lot of what was going on.
Yeah.
She saw some things. They are shocked that no one on both the Republican or the Democratic side is talking about the deficit. I think there is this notion, like Angie's pointing out, it's not a 1 year issue. It's not a 2 year issue. This is a 5 to 10 year issue that eventually we're getting to a boiling point where that deficit is no longer sustainable. I know we're sort of out of time now, but very curious as we continue to talk about this. Let's bring our guests back on and really have this conversation.
Well, so here's the other thing is that the deficit's already proving to be a problem because of how much the Treasury is issuing. And that was part of the issue in September with the repo market, because now these banks are in the business. They're not moving. They're not in the moving business when it comes to these Treasury securities. They're in the storage business. They're holding these on their balance sheet. And then those have to be financed in the repo market. So you have a whole lot of debt, a lot of collateral that's going into the repo market. So that's also creating some imbalances there. And that's a big problem. So for anyone who's saying the debt doesn't matter, yeah, maybe on a more public front, it might not matter to people, but it matters for the repo market. We definitely saw that.
All right, Alex Harris, Andrew Husby, thank you so much. Let's get to Bob Moon now. He's got world national headlines. Bob.
Jason, the United States and Taliban have reached a truce agreement, according to a senior U.S. official, that will take effect very soon and could lead to withdrawals of American troops from Afghanistan. Army Secretary Ryan McCarthy says he's pleased the talks appear to be leading to results.
This is a first step in the process to reach a political solution. So it's going to take several weeks for this to unfold, but it's very encouraging that we're heading down the path to a political solution.
The official, who spoke on condition of anonymity, said the Taliban have committed to a halt in roadside and suicide bombings as well as rocket attacks. Federal prosecutors have declined to charge former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, closing an investigation into whether the longtime target of President Trump's ire had lied to federal officials about his involvement in a leak to the news media. The Justice Department informed his legal team by mail.
As glad as I am that the Justice Department and the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office finally decided to do the right thing today, it is an absolute disgrace that they took 2 years before they finally drew the obvious conclusion.
McCabe said today the pursuit of political enemies is not something that should be happening in the United States of America. Michael Avenatti, who gained fame representing Stormy Daniels in lawsuits against President Trump, was convicted by a federal jury in Manhattan today of trying to extort millions from sportswear giant Nike. His lawyers said he was following the wishes of an amateur youth basketball league director who wanted him to force Nike to fire corrupt executives and fix its culture. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hey, have you heard? The Mayor of London has launched his latest van scrappage scheme to help tackle London's toxic air. Small businesses or sole traders like me with a polluting van could now get £7,000, which you could use to trade up to a Euro 6 vehicle. And you could get an extra £2,500 towards running costs if you go electric. The scheme is now even easier to qualify for, and it's open to any businesses with up to 50 employees, like mine. So, I'm going to search TfL scrappage to see if I'm eligible and apply. You should do the same. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
A half-price dream holiday, wouldn't want to miss that. A takeaway for free, wouldn't want to miss that. And 30 gigs data for just £10 a month on Smarty Mobile. You definitely don't want to miss that. Our Smarty SIM comes packed with 30 gigs of data and unlimited calls and texts for just £10 a month on a 1-month plan. That's why Smarty won Best Value SIM-only network in the U-Switch Mobile Awards 2020. Don't miss out. Search Smarty Mobile. Smarty. Simple, honest mobile. Smarty.co.uk.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
For up to 50% off selected floors and beds. For first-class fitting. For kicking your heels off. For overexcited kids. And pets. For thrills and spills. For a special welcome home. For up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet Right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Finding your perfect new home can be tough. So if you keep missing out,
it's time to search out On the Market.
There are thousands of new properties to buy or rent every month at onthemarket.com. 24 hours or more before they're on Rightmove or Zoopla.
On the Market.
See them first. Set up a property alert today.
Search onthemarket.com to find your perfect home.
If you're in the market, search onthemarket.com. See onthemarket.com/new and exclusive. Agents specify exclusivity.
The Dacia Duster has won what car? Best family SUV less than £20,000 for the second year running. Time to roll out the fanfare. Starting from only $10,995, our prices are pretty modest, just like our celebrations. Visit dacia.co.uk to find out more about our range of award-winning cars. Dacia, you do the maths.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 43 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. 43 minutes until we've got a long holiday weekend for a lot of people. So let's head right over. Let's rush right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks trading well off their session highs right now. The Dow currently down 115 points. S&P's dropped 5. NASDAQ declines by 8. The U.S. 10-year yield at 1.58%. Gold trading higher by 7. Small caps dropped 7 points. And just 3 of the main 11 S&P sectors are trading higher, led by gains in real estate and utilities. Energy and the industrials led to the downside. Nasdaq Biotechs gained 10 points. Transports drop 143. Semis sink 11. And the VIX is higher by 1%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Visa, American Express, and Merck, while IBM, Caterpillar, and Walgreens led to the downside. After earnings, Expedia rose 12%, NVIDIA gained 7.2%, and wrapping things up, Kraft Heinz was cut to junk by Fitch. Live from the First Word Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, Bill, have a great weekend. We thank you. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type Squawk, SQUAWK, on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you, Charlie. I'm Taylor Riggs here with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it's one of my favorite stories of the week. Not surprisingly, Andy Massa wrote it. It's about big money on big money. Vanguard, we're talking about the mutual fund manager looking after mutual funds, looking after index funds, getting into the business of private equity, sort of dipping its toe a bit, but we think probably they're going to put a leg in it before too long. Annie's here with me in New York City, Taylor Riggs in San Francisco. All right, so Annie, tell us what Vanguard's up to.
So Vanguard has announced plans for a new private equity fund that at first will only be available to institutions, smaller institutions like endowments and nonprofit foundations, but that it hopes to open up to a broader range of investors as it can. And it's doing this with HarborVest Partners, managing the fund out of Boston.
So, Annie, the interesting thing is that Vanguard is known for low-cost, passive indexing. This is now PE, which you think of as high fees, certainly nowhere near passive investing. How does this fit into Vanguard's strategy?
It's a great question. As you know, Vanguard is synonymous with this kind of retail-facing, ultra-low-cost index fund ethos that it was really built on. But, I mean, it does have an active management arm. It's got over $1 trillion in active strategies. And it sees this PE vehicle as a continuation of that. But that's not to understate that it really is a departure for such a huge indexing giant, or an index fund giant. So PE, obviously, it's a place with higher fees, longer lockup periods, and just a very different realm of investing than index funds.
And so tell us about the experimentation that's happened so far, because other big money managers, the big three, we called Vanguard, you helped us understand a few weeks ago, Vanguard, State Street, and BlackRock. There's been some experimentation here, right?
Yeah, that's right. Vanguard's certainly not the only one of those three big fund firms to try and get into PE. You also saw BlackRock 2 years ago announce its own new private equity style vehicle called long-term private capital that's taking stakes in private companies. And it's another indication, now that you see Vanguard doing it as well, that private equity is becoming kind of irresistible to these firms. And, fees are something that you cannot ignore. And also, there's more institutional ability to allocate to private equity. You see funds raising record amounts. So it's a piece of the market that they don't want to be left out of for much longer.
Annie, I also wonder if this is classic peak PE, that if Vanguard is getting in, it's just a sign of my mom, my dad, my grandma, every sort of retail investor wanting a piece of the action, and that is the sign that we are at peak PE and we should all be running for the hills.
Taylor, don't be so dismissive of the rigs. They're very sophisticated investors.
With no offense to anyone in your family and their investing strategies, Taylor, some people say, some kind of advocates for individual investors have said, we haven't, this vehicle is not open to retail investors yet, and it's important to note that there are regulatory restrictions on who can invest in PE right now. You see big firms like Blackstone and KKR and Apollo wanting to angle into a broader audience and open up their private equity vehicles to more investors. But what these advocates for individual investors say in some cases is, they're not sure that it makes sense to change the rules about who can invest in PE because they're more esoteric, the lockup periods are longer, and they say that it might not necessarily be a good thing for the end investor or like the less sophisticated investor.
Well, and as you noted there, Blackstone and others, Blackstone, Carlyle, KKR, they are desperate to get to this like holy grail of the retail investor. They just see this as this massive pool that they want to swim into to their heart's content, right?
And if you think about it, you can't really have PE in a 401k, right, for example. But I think that they might argue a 401k is a perfect place for a private equity fund because you're not really supposed to touch that money for long periods of time, for decades. So it makes perfect sense to, put a PE style vehicle in there. Of course, they have products to sell, so you have to keep that in mind as they, make their case in Washington.
Annie, any sort of thoughts on when we would see this type of vehicle be open to retail investors?
There's no real clarity around that yet, but regulators are reassessing whether they should change some of the restrictions on private equity investments. So it's an issue that's evolving, and Vanguard is, I think, trying to get ahead of it because I think they wouldn't want to be caught flat-footed if the regulations were to change with their army of advisors that could potentially sell those kinds of vehicles to their investors.
Trying to be on the Vanguard. All right, Annie Massa, investing reporter for Bloomberg, keeping a very close eye on everything that happens in the world of big money on our investing team. Thank you so much. All right, coming up, we're going to get you to the close of trading for the week. But before we get to that, we're going to get to Mr. Dave Wilson. He's going to be along with his chart of the day, and he gives a little hint earlier as to what it would be about, Taylor. So you always love
it. It is all about value versus growth. Cannot wait.
There you
growth
go.
has been on a tear, so curious his thoughts.
Yeah, right in your wheelhouse. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks are going quietly into the President's Day weekend. Prices are mostly lower, with coronavirus worries still in the background. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 113, the S&P 500 down 4, the Nasdaq Composite down 5. Even as technology creates thousands of well-paying jobs, women are still being left behind. Smart Asset reports New York and San Francisco, sometimes rivals for tech talent, have slid backwards on gender diversity in recent years. Facebook is preparing to face off against the IRS in a tax dispute that could cost it up to $9 billion. At issue is Facebook's transfer of assets like trademarks and copyrights to a subsidiary in Ireland. The movies have one, TV has one, so do music and Broadway. Now podcasts are getting their own awards show. A group of podcasters is forming the Podcast Academy with plans to launch the Golden Mics next year. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
Open calendar. What's my schedule looking like?
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an emergency flash flood between Park and First Street.
What? No, that doesn't work. I'm busy then. Decline. Decline.
Floods don't exactly work around your schedule. Disasters don't plan ahead. But you can. It starts with talking to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. So don't wait. Communicate. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The 2020 NBA All-Star Game is live on TuneIn Premium. Catch every fast break, fadeaway, and alley-oop as Team LeBron and Team Giannis go head-to-head in Chicago.
Deep three, and in! Oh, man! 5 to shoot, LeBron long three. Good!
Which star will shine the brightest? Who will be named this year's MVP? Find out Sunday at 8 Eastern with ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA All-Star Game on TuneIn. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
JIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
You know your body, and you know when something's off, when something doesn't feel quite right. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, rashes, and fever. They could be signs of lupus. Listen to your body. Take care of yourself. We're here to help you take control of your health. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia. How should investors be positioning? We go there.
Talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Sunday night at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
I love when Dave Wilson does his chart and there's like a little bit of something for everyone, especially when we have a special guest host like Taylor Riggs. And there's something in here for you, Taylor.
There is. It's all about growth versus value. And we've been talking a lot about...
Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Just going to say a rotation trade is underway. That's all I've got for you.
All right. We're going to get into that in just a minute. We got to keep some things under the veil. First, Charlie Pellet, he's going to tell us what's going on with the trade. Hey, Charlie.
All right. It is a down day, but stick around to find out if the music matches the chart, as always is the case with Dave Wilson. We've got the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all lower. 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell as we wrap up this week. By the way, the S&P 500 index is on track for a winning week, second in a row, but here's where we stand. S&P lower, little change right now, down a point. The Dow down 95, lower by 0.3%. NASDAQ lower by a point. Equities have been fluctuating after the release of steady, if uninspiring, numbers for retail sales, and investors are assessing contrasting data from China on how the coronavirus is spreading. As for the overall market backdrop, Jane Foley is head of FX strategy at Rabobank in London.
I think what's quite important here is that the market potentially hasn't been focusing on the Chinese consumer. So we've been looking at supply chains. We've been looking at companies that are saying that the supply chains are hurt. And many people say, well, yeah, but that would be temporary and would bounce back perhaps in the next quarter. But actually, what about the Chinese consumer?
The 10-year up 8/32, yield now 1.58%. Gold up 0.4%, advancing almost $7 the ounce at $15.82. West Texas Intermediate crude up 1.3%, $52.08 a barrel. Nvidia shares after earnings up now by 7%. We've got Expedia surging 11.4% after giving a 2020 profit forecast for double-digit growth, topping analyst estimates. Again, recapping here, stocks lower, a little change. That's the key takeaway. S&P down by a point. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's never leave our dreams behind. It would comfort and restore my pride.
All right, Dave Wilson is here. I'm trying to make out.
You work on it. There's a couple of voices in there.
I can't get that. I mean, it almost sounds like Bruce is in there.
He is.
He is. Okay.
Okay.
Who's he with?
Who's he with? Somebody who's a solo artist, who's worked with Neil Young, and who's worked with Bruce.
A solo artist who's worked with Neil Young You're going to have to tell me. At least I got Bruce.
Nils Lofgren.
Ah, there you go.
Absolutely.
Okay,
he's on the latest album by Neil Young and Crazy Horse.
Got it.
He worked with him back in the 70s. And, of course, since the 80s, he's been a mainstay in the E Street Band. So there you go. It's a song called Valentine, which perfectly appropriate for today. And I'll tell you, if you're an investor who's focused on value stocks, you could probably use Valentine's and a few stiff drinks and a whole lot of things, because you're hurting about now, in relative terms at least. You just keep seeing the shares of companies that are relatively cheap by comparison with things like earnings and sales and asset values. I mean, they just can't keep up with the shares of the faster growing companies. And what the chart tries to do, because I've actually looked at the relationship between value and growth stocks in the past, is to kind of explain what the heck is going on here. There are two things working against value investors in a broad sense when you go through the S&P 500 value and growth indexes. Specifically, two industries working against them. One is technology, because the S&P 500 value index only has about an 8% weighting in tech stocks. And the growth index has 38%, which is huge because they have been the best performers among the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500 for some time. I focus on the past year with the chart just to provide some context. And then you look and you see there is one group that's down over the past year, and that's energy. And guess what? When you go through and compare weights, you see the S&P 500 value index, 7% in energy stocks, almost as much as tech. And the figure for the growth index, only about 1%. 38% tech, 1% energy. You talk about an imbalance that's definitely worked in favor of the growth stock investors. I mean, that's what's really jumping out from the numbers. And actually, the chart goes through all 11 groups to try and provide some sense of how they compare, because it just, there's such a gap in performance, energy versus everything else, tech in particular, that it's worth the exercise. And if you want to know more, folks, send me an email. I'll get you the chart, the explanation that goes with it, and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
All right, so I feel like this is just for you, Taylor. Get in here.
Well, where are we, Dave, in the rotation between value and growth?
Well, I mean, the fact is there hasn't been a rotation. You had some people at the beginning of the year figuring it was time for value stocks to come back, and they just haven't done it. The relationship between, the value and growth indexes, that ratio just keeps right on falling, as it's been doing, basically since the middle of the bear market that preceded the current bull market, which arguably has been going on now for almost 11 years. So it's more of the same. It's more of the same. That's why I figured rather than just show the ratio, it would be worth it to kind of dissect the indexes and find out why the disparity exists. And when you look at tech stocks, you look at energy stocks, they are two obvious industry groups that have contributed to the performance gap.
So how does this shift it? I mean, what do we need to see to sort of see a change here, do you think, Dave?
Well, what it comes down to is maybe oil prices start to rebound. That would be one thing. And for another, I mean, that's sort of the big question for the bull market more generally.
Right.
At what point do the largest technology companies falter?
Right.
I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And by the way, when you talk about tech, it's in the narrow sense. Let's not forget that, Facebook and Google's owner Alphabet, they're in communication services, which, by the way, is disproportionately weighted toward growth rather than value as well. So when you think about tech companies, it's Apple, it's Microsoft, and I've talked about how they're now 10% of the broader S&P 500 between them, which you haven't seen in the past. So these are the sort of things that would have to change in order for the relationship between growth and value stocks to shift in any meaningful way here.
All right. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. We'll see you just after the close of trading for the week to get your stock of the day. Coming up, we're going to get you to the close of trading, the drive to the close talk a little bit about factor performance and maybe a little bit more around value, little small caps, like going to be something for everyone here, Taylor Riggs. But first, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got your world and national headlines. Hi, Bob.
Jason, guilty as charged. A federal jury in Manhattan has convicted Michael Avenatti, the combative lawyer who gained fame representing a porn star in lawsuits involving President Trump, of trying to extort millions from sportswear giant Nike. Avenatti glared at jurors as the verdict was being announced, but said nothing. He could face up to 42 years in prison. The New York Times reports William Barr has privately ordered a review of the criminal case against President Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, and assigned it to an outside prosecutor. Flynn pleaded guilty twice to lying to the FBI about contacts with Russia. It's the latest in a series of Justice Department's unusual moves that have raised questions about possible political interference. Campaigning in Nevada today, Democratic presidential hopeful Amy Klobuchar told reporters the Attorney General needs to set this all straight.
Under oath, we are going to be able to get the information that I want to get about the political influence of this White House, how this decision was made that led to these four career prosecutors to leave their workplace. To me, that is what we want. I want the facts, and I want to know what this president did.
The White House is saying the president still has full confidence in Barr. At the same time, President Trump is ignoring his attorney general's public request to stop tweeting about the Justice Department. Trump says he has the legal right to ask the agency to intervene in a criminal case, but so far he's, quote, chosen not to. A possible truce between the U.S. and Taliban, a senior American official says a 7-day reduction in violence agreement will take effect very soon. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
The market. Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
What do you do to be an everyday superhero, like Mary?
So I know it's tempting to pour used cooking oil straight down the sink, but I spoke to the local council and they said the best way to get rid of oil or fat is to collect it, once it's cooled down, of course, in a used container. And then you can scoop it out and put it in the bin.
Cooking oils and fats block thousands of pipes every year. Save our sewers, rivers and seas by putting them in the bin where they belong. Visit thameswater.co.uk/bin it. Together, we can care for the environment.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Major League Baseball is back. Are you ready to unlock the 2020 season with TuneIn Premium?
And this one is gone! It hits the foul pole!
Be there from day one with every single game of spring training, rivalry games, split squads, Cactus League, Grapefruit League. TuneIn Premium has it all. Then, when the pitch count starts for real, experience live and on-demand access to every game, everywhere you go, from opening day to the World Series. Don't miss out on the action. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stocks have turned around since our last update. We've got the S&P 500 index on the plus side now, barely up less than 0.1%, but green on the screen on this Valentine's Day, up 2 points now at 33.76. The Dow down 57 points, a drop of 0.2%, and NASDAQ higher by 6. That is a gain of 0.1%. Stocks have been fluctuating. We've got the 10-year up 8/30 seconds with a yield of 1.59%. Gold up 0.4 now, higher by $6.80 the ounce at $15.82. West Texas Intermediate crude advanced 1.3%, $52.07. A barrel of Brent, the global benchmark, up 1.8%, $57.34. Recapping, S&P up right now by a point, little change there. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no.
Who's gonna drive you home?
Honey, please, I'll do the driving.
Drive on.
Excuse me, I want to drive.
Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the drive to the close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, it's time for the drive to the close. Let's get into it with Rob Crochet. He is Senior Portfolio Manager for Risk Parity and Managed Futures at Mellon. Joining us on the phone from Boston. Rob, great to have you with Taylor Riggs and myself. So what are you seeing in this market right now? It feels like we're kind of catching our breath here on a Friday after a few turbulent weeks, and candidly, a couple turbulent Fridays where you saw a big sell-off going into the weekend.
It still feels like a risk-on market to us.
Yeah.
When we when we saw the response of the market to, frankly, pretty big macro news, including coronavirus, and the market just seems to continue to shrug off risk with the idea that monetary policy has got our back. The market has a really positive sentiment here.
Rob, I was reading through your notes, and one thing that I really liked is you're talking about value, go long cheap stocks, short expensive ones. We were talking in an earlier segment about the rotation, or really the lack of rotation here between value and growth. You still preferring value here?
As a quant investor, we try to be empirically driven. And the truth is that for a big investor that has to deploy significant capital, traditional value, just naively applied, has never really worked. So if you break down what's driven, Fama French factor performance, it was tiny stocks. And it was actually the short side of tiny stocks. So small stocks that have been really beaten down and are still expensive, those are the ones that have tended to do very poorly. And being short those has been a great booster for value strategies. And so if you look at the data that is underneath of the original papers on value, they are not supportive of just being long a big, naive value index portfolio. Never worked, doesn't work now.
So talk to us about factors, Rob. Remind us, for our audience that's not as familiar, what that involves, what basically the lens through which you see the market is.
Absolutely. When we think about the market, we're thinking about it as a group of stocks that are weighted by their market capitalization relative to each other. So when I think about beta, that is just exposure to the market as it exists in the market today. I'm buying more of stocks that have higher market cap and less of stocks with lower market cap. Smart beta, or sort of long-only factor exposure, is where you're still long-only, but you've got exposure only to stocks with certain characteristics. So you let go of that cap weighting methodology, and you begin to weight based on something, the attractiveness of valuations, or how well it's done recently, or how defensive it is, low volatility it is, how the quality of the stock's earnings. So those are smart beta portfolios. I'm still long only, but I'm long a basket of stocks I think will outperform the market because they have good characteristics. And then pure factors, long short, are smart beta minus beta, just the smart part.
Rob, curious to see how you are factoring in momentum at this point, if at all.
So we're always factoring in momentum. Momentum is one of the factors that works across cap sizes. So if you're a big investor, you can still take advantage of momentum strategies. The other thing about momentum is it's the same language across asset classes. So it's very straightforward for me to build a portfolio where I'm doing momentum in cash equities, I'm doing momentum in equity indices, I'm doing momentum in bonds and commodities. It is a very robust factor, and frankly, it's been a much better performing factor than value since it was discovered.
Do you have, I'm curious to dig a little bit more into the momentum question, if you've ever seen momentum like this before. You think of the massive run up, the length of the bull market, and the rate at which we have gotten to fresh record highs every day. Have you seen this type of momentum before as you take a look at your factor models?
We haven't seen this length of a bull market in stocks. I mean, I think that's unequivocal. But what we've clearly seen is runs where you have made as much money, it being long or short based on momentum. What's different in this market is that if you're talking about trend following, which is momentum, but with a drifting bias to being long when stuff's going well on average, this is not a market that's been permitted to fall. So it used to be the case that when sentiment got bad, it could get worse and get worse after that, and that markets would continue to fall, and there would be this building sort of bad sentiment that gets worse and worse. That has not happened. Monetary policy has got our back, and anytime the market really starts to do very poorly, monetary policy expectations change, treasury yields plummet, and the party starts over again. And because of that, that's been hard because as a factor investor, a lot of what we do in factor space makes money when sentiment changes for the worse. That is a big part of why factors have been so awful lately.
So, Rob, we started the conversation talking about a market that has been shrugging it off, or maybe in the words of another Taylor Swift, shaking it off. When you think about the coronavirus, you think about how global markets, and certainly the U.S. market, has continued, with a couple notable exceptions, to really take it in stride. Does that worry you at all? Does that sort of go against what you would expect, given all the factors you talked about?
It does. A lot of stuff worries us but as those worries are the same thing that cause an investor that doesn't have discipline, doesn't have a process to bail out before they've done as well as they can in the market. Most of our investors need to make 7+% return a year on average in order to meet their liabilities. And you can't make that kind of return in a high valuation market, especially if you're not invested. Right. And so tapping out is not an option. So what's left? Well, you basically have to manage risk very actively. You stay in the market and you monitor for when the environment changes, and you adapt very quickly. And that's what we do across our platform with all of our adaptive strategies.
All right. Rob Croce is Senior Portfolio Manager for Risk Parity and Managed Futures, talking to us about smart beta factors and so much more. He works at Mellon, joined us on the phone from Boston. Well, we are just a few minutes away from closing out the market for the week. The S&P and the NASDAQ sneaking into positive territory. The Dow down just a touch. So a little bit of a rally, little mini rally here toward the end of the trading day, the end of the trading week, Taylor. Kind of interesting to see.
Yeah, it has been. And I'm looking at some individual stocks, particularly within the tech space that we will get into, because like we've been talking about pretty much all week, all year, tech has really been leading a lot of these gains. And so always fun to dive in and to see most of the ones I'm looking at getting more price target upgrades.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about some of those individual stocks, your movers and shakers, coming up in just a few minutes. I'm Jason Kelly. She's Taylor Riggs. This is Bloomberg.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace for up to 50% off selected floors and beds, and up to an additional £250 off your total flooring order. Carpet right for life. Terms and conditions apply.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
The UK has now left the EU, and we're in a transition period until the end of the year. Throughout this period, the government will be forging new partnerships with the EU and the rest of the world. This could lead to new arrangements for trade, travel, and business. To find out about the changes and how they might affect you, go to gov.uk/transition.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Folks, from Ralph Lauren ringing that closing bell on this Valentine's Day, and it is on to the weekend. Love on Wall Street here. Record on the S&P 500 index comes down to decimals, but the S&P 500 index finishing this Friday session at 3379. Yes, that is a record. We have got the NASDAQ Composite Index pushing higher as well. For the NASDAQ Composite Index, that too a record, up 19 points higher by 0.2%. S&P, by the way, up 0.2. It was a down day. The Dow narrowed its losses, light volume, but the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 27 points, a drop there of 0.1%. S&P 500 Index spent much of the session swinging between gains and losses. Energy firms and financials slipped. Investors crowded into havens like utilities and real estate. 10-year up 8.30 seconds. The yield there 1.59%. Gold up 0.4%, 15.82 the ounce. Rob Crochet is Senior Portfolio Manager at Mellon, and moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week, he told him this still feels like a risk-on market to him.
When we saw the response of the market to, frankly, pretty big macro news, including coronavirus, and the market just seems to continue to shrug off risk with the idea that monetary policy has got our back. The market has a really positive sentiment here.
Chains like Walmart and Home Depot rose after U.S. retail sales climbed in January for a fourth straight month. Walmart shares up today by 0.4%. Dow Jones Industrial Average climbed by 0.1%. After earnings, Nvidia shares rallied 7% today. Also a rally in Expedia shares after earnings. Expedia up today by 11%. So recapping on the equity numbers here, S&P 500 index climbing to a record, up 6 points, a gain there of 0.2%. NASDAQ up 19, also a record higher by 0.2%. The Dow lower by 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Your next move will be your last.
Nobody move a muscle. Tippy, you got to move.
And I'm moving from town to town.
Time is money. Let's go. Come on, move it.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Mazur and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, let's do a little movers and shakers, your winners and losers, as we wrap up the week in trading. Going down a level on the, S&P Taylor Riggs, you see 265 names up, 238 names down, 2 unchanged, another sort of even split as the market tries to get a sense of it. You got a little bit of a sense of defensiveness as Charlie read through the names there. But, going back to what Rob Crochet said, this is a market that generally is kind of shaking it off, to quote another Taylor.
100%. And, the stocks in part that are shaking it off, one of the ones that you and I wanted to talk about are Expedia. They're closing up 11% today. Management has forecasted double-digit profit growth for this year. Pretty much tons of analysts on Wall Street are now boosting their price targets. You had Evercore come out and say the company is setting a new bar. A lot of analysts are looking at an invigorated Barry Diller, staying consistent really with his view of accelerated growth for this year for Expedia. Perhaps this is a little bit unexpected, and that's why the stock is up 11% on the day.
Yeah, it's your best performer by some measure in the S&P, and closely followed by a tech name that you heard Charlie Pellet mention, NVIDIA. I got a chance to catch up with Anand Srinivasan yesterday after that report came out. Feels like data centers was really the strong suit there for NVIDIA. Gaming did okay, but data centers specifically around the cloud were an important factor there, Tech.
Speaking music to my ears, when we say data center and cloud, you know that we in San Francisco
right in your wheelhouse. Right in your
get
wheelhouse.
all excited here. You know, another one that people are really excited about out here are shares of Roku. Now, this is interesting because we were rising earlier in trading, and then the market ended up closing down more than 6%. Roku did, and it's really interesting. The outlook is overshadowing what people thought was a pretty good quarter. Roku, remember, is a company that is benefiting from the shift to streaming. I've heard a lot of analysts on the street come out and say that you cannot launch a streaming device or a streaming service without also launching on Roku, given the amount of eyeballs that are both on this hardware device, but it's not just a hardware company anymore. But then as you sort of sifted through the earnings report, they were saying the beat on the bottom line wasn't as much as it typically has. So perhaps really, really high expectations for this company, and they wanted a better than expected beat on the bottom line. But still, most analysts staying really positive on the company. You had a Rosenblatt, for example, raising their price target now to a 190 from a 159, saying generally stellar quarter.
Yeah, interesting. That's an interesting read. Another tech-related name I wanted to mention is Pinterest. You had a bull coming out and saying that the copycat, quote-unquote, that Facebook was creating, not really all that. He wasn't so worried. This is an analyst over at Wedbush. I guess the app from Facebook is called Hobby, Hobbi. But all the investors in Pinterest not so convinced because that stock, the symbol is, not surprisingly, PINS, P-I-N-S. You know that all too well as the tech maven. That stock ended up down about 1.4%. So Wedbush maybe helped people feel a little bit better because it was down as much as 2.4%. So one to watch. And obviously Pinterest is one of those names that I feel like folks out near you watch pretty closely, right?
Yeah, you know, we watch it closely. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. It's not a company that we follow a lot, but interesting when we're talking about when they IPO'd, you have a small but a pretty dedicated audience. So it's not a big company, but they have a unique ad targeting model where they know exactly the type of audience that they're going for. Jitendra Woral, he's our Bloomberg intelligence analyst here, has done stellar work on this, basically saying that the company made a lot of investments in 2019. It'll start to pay off in 2020. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the thesis, Jason, of Pinterest.
All right. Well, you've been out in San Francisco too long because it's a $13 billion market cap company. I know it's not big when it comes to the big tech names. All right. Let's take a look at volatility. The VIX, it was down about 2.8% today, closing at 13.76. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up. Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door. It's Dave. Who? Dave.
Dave Wilson back with his Stock of the Day, a Friday edition. Ryder Systems.
That's right. Do you
That's
remember
Ryder, yeah?
Yeah. Do you remember the advertising slogan, Ryder rents trucks?
Totally.
Well, you know,
the
back
big yellow
then,
trucks, right?
Right. Back then, the company had a consumer business, and that operation was shed in the 1990s. Since then, it's focused on corporate customers. Ryder not only rents trucks, but also leases them. And the company manages businesses' raw material supplies, product distribution, and everything in between. Ryder was founded in 1934 and went public in 1955. The ticker is just one letter, R. The company's shares peaked in April 2015 and have fallen as much as 61% since then. Disappointing earnings have spurred the retreat now. Ryder put out fourth quarter results late yesterday, and they brought more of the same. The company had a loss of a penny a share, and every analyst in the Bloomberg survey expected a profit instead. And as for 2020, Ryder said it expects a slowdown in rentals to hurt business throughout the year. The results and outlook sent Ryder shares to their lowest price since October 2012. They closed with a loss of 9.7%.
All right. That's a good name. I have to say, I hadn't thought about Ryder Trucks in quite some time. Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Have a great weekend, great long weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday for more market insights, charts, And stocks coming up. I'm going to catch up with the chairman and CEO of Taylor Morrison, big name in real estate, Cheryl Palmer. She'll be along talking about earnings, some deal making, and home building. First, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got World National Headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, infections and deaths from the coronavirus in China ballooned for a second straight day today, on paper at least. Confirmed cases of the virus, 63,851 in mainland China. Officials near the epicenter of the outbreak are struggling to keep up with a backlog of patients' lab work. Experts again say the acceleration in cases is not necessarily an indicator of a surge in the illness now known as COVID-19. Because Chinese authorities changed the way they're counting cases, President Trump, meantime, says he's satisfied with China's response.
I spoke with President Xi of China, and he's working very hard on this. It's a tremendous problem, but they're very capable, and they'll get to it. There's a theory that in April, when it gets warm, historically, that has been able to kill the virus, so we don't know yet. We're not sure yet.
The Centers for Disease Control, meantime, says it will start testing for the rapidly spreading virus through its existing seasonal influenza surveillance system in L.A., San Francisco, Seattle, Chicago, and New York City. Federal prosecutors have declined to charge former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, according to his law team, closing an investigation into whether he lied to federal officials about his involvement in a news media leak. McCabe, a CNN contributor, told the network he's glad to be able to speak out about the country he loves.
As the president's interest in pursuing his perceived political enemies continued over the last 2 years, we were getting more and more concerned about where this would end up. Because quite frankly, we are seeing things happen every day in this country that many of us never, ever thought we'd see here.
The decision resolves a 2-year investigation. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob.
Two people who are as fascinated by the markets as you are.
What's your sense of the competitive landscape in the cloud business?
Lisa Abramowitz.
People were talking about potential regulatory pressure.
And Paul Sweeney.
Are you seeing flows into ESG ETFs?
Bloomberg Markets.
What's your main conversation today with some of these corporate executives?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern.
They're spending a lot of money there.
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Right now, Doctors Without Borders medical teams are operating in some of the most remote and dangerous corners of the world. When front yards become front lines, at the crossroads of conflict and epidemic, where there are no hospitals, that's where we operate. Your response is critical to our response in places where few others will go. That's where we operate. Learn more at doctorswithoutborders.org.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies? Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Tom has been a teacher for over 40 years. One day, I think one of the students had asked the question and he didn't remember the answer. And I also noticed that he was letting his class out earlier than they were supposed to let out. I was really starting to worry.
Levi and I talked about how it would change our lives, but he was there beside